Hello everyone, in this short video I will show you how to run Raven as a command line program. So what I've done so far is I've downloaded the zip files for the Raven executable version 3.8 Windows 64-bit for my system, and also downloaded the zip file of the Raven tutorial files for exercises 1 to 5 and unzip both of them to the locations here. So we can find the Raven program in this folder as a .exe application file. This is a compiled program, so as I mentioned, it is a command line program. It runs only from command line. If you double click on this, assuming that it runs, you may have a security check here. You see something flash and then disappears. This produces the errors file, which if we look at this, in this case it is empty, but I'll show you what the message looks like when we run it as a command line program. So what we can do is from Windows, and again, your system may be a little bit different depending on which version of Windows you're running, but we can use command prompt to run to run Raven from a command line program. I'll show you a couple of commands once we have this command prompt open. So very basic ones, dir for directory. If you enter this, you'll see the list of directories of your current folder. Your current folder is what's shown here at the end of this, this icon here. We want to navigate to our, in this case where I have the things saved under downloads and this Raven executable Windows 64-bit. So I can use the cd command for change directory. So I change directory from here to downloads. I can enter that. Okay. I enter directory again. I can now see that I have my downloads here, including the Raven executable folder. I can run cd again. I could have chained these commands together as well, but whatever is easier. There we go. And okay, I can now see I have my Raven exe program as well as the manual here and my errors file. So let me clear that for a moment. Clear this file. If it lets me delete it. There we go. So over here, I can now run Raven. If I enter dir again, we see that the text file is gone. So I can run Raven from this command line program in command prompt by simply typing the name of the program, raven.exe. This is case sensitive. If I enter it like this and I hit enter, I will now see what error I received before. So we can now see that Raven, I entered it here, hit enter. It did run the program. We can see information about the build version and build date, and we see this error cannot find model.rbi, and we see it as an error statement here as well. So in this case, Raven requires additional arguments to the executable in order to be run successfully. So what I want to do is now provide some model input files. The easiest way, I think, to actually run Raven in these tutorial examples is just to simply copy and paste the executable file into the directory where the model files are. You can basically point to different files, but that's a bit more advanced, so for now we'll just keep everything in the same folder to keep it simple. So if I right click and copy, which Windows doesn't seem to think is an important option anymore, there we go, copy, navigate up a folder, go to the tutorial files. Tutorial file number 1 uses the iron folder for Irondequoit. I will navigate here, and in this case I had it there already, but I will paste it here. So now I have my model files for this tutorial 1 example, and I have my Raven executable here. If I go back to my command prompt, I can run cd to change directory back to my around folder. So in this case I need to go up one level, so I will run cd and ... which is the syntax to go up one folder. And now I can cd into the Raven tutorial files, and I know which folder I need, so I can run change this to Raven tutorial files / iron, and that goes basically into the tutorial files and into the iron folder in one command. Hit enter. I can now check what I have with the dir command for dir directory, and I can see I have my model files as well as the Raven executable here. So everything is in one place. That makes it easy. I can enter raven.exe. If I am feeling efficient, let's say, I can also tab and it will autocomplete. It will basically see what files are in the folder and it'll guess at what I'm trying to provide. And since there's only one file that is called Raven, it'll autocomplete the extension for me, or any part of this. If I just have RAV, it can still match it. So that's just a little shortcut. So raven.exe, however you got there. And the next input that is required for this executable is the name of the model file. And in this case, everything is the 5 main input files, RV, C, H, I, P, and T, all have the same prefix or file name here. And so what I'm going to enter is iRond. What you typically provide is the name of the RVI file, and Raven will assume that all the other file names have the same basic file name, but with the various Raven file extensions. So if we just type iRond, all the 5 main input files here have the same name, just with different extensions, and so Raven will be able to find all of these files in one folder here. And again, we can set this up more efficiently, or depending what project you're doing, you might want to have different file names, things like that. But for now, we'll keep it simple in this example. So raven.exe, and iRond is the model file name that we're providing as the first argument. We can hit enter, and we now have a successful model run with Raven. And you'll notice here in the folder, there are a number of output files that were just created. So we have a new errors file, which is always produced even if it ran successfully. There are a number of advisories and other bits of information that are worth looking at always. And we also have several outputs, including the hydrogas file, the watershed storage file, things like that. One good way to organize things, I'll delete these for a moment. We can provide a second argument to Raven. So I'll do that first by hitting up arrow, and this just goes through the history of commands that I've run in command prompt. And that brings me to the most recent run command, which is raven.exe, and then iRond is the model folder name. And I will add another argument to Raven with a what's called an output flag. So I will type in hyphen lowercase o. This tells Raven that I want to provide an output directory instead of just dumping the output files into the same folder in which the input files exist. And I will call the output folder output, very simply. Now if I run this, it'll run the same way, except that it now has output written to the output folder. Still a successful simulation, and I can now see there's a new folder created called output. And if I open that folder, I see a number of output files, same as before, but just now put in a different file, different folder. And that way it just helps to keep the input and output files separate. As I mentioned, there are more things you can do with this and more clever ways you can organize files and point to different files, but we'll leave that for now. One question you may have is, how come these have a slightly different name? And the answer is that these are pointed to from within the main RVT file. So if I open this, it just says redirect to file and points to this file name. So that's how Raven knows to read in those file names, even though they're not called the exact same thing. So that rule about the same file name, in this case IROND, only applies to those 5 main input files, and from there you can point to other files. One last thing that I'll show you is, depending on what you run here, in this case I ran with command prompt, you may also end up running with something called PowerShell. If you do that, I'll show you on my system at least, if I hold the shift key and right click on here, this is a shortcut to open terminal, whatever terminal program it is. In my system it's Windows PowerShell. There are slightly different commands because these are Unix based. But I just want to show you this just in case you end up using PowerShell instead of command prompt. So ls is the equivalent of the dir command, dir. So that just lists all the files and folders that are here. And if I run Raven here, the key part is that instead of running raven.exe just as we did before, this will produce an error. And what you need to do in PowerShell, because it has a slightly different syntax, is enter /raven.exe, and that basically just tells it that this is a program to run instead of any other file, like a text file that you want to view. Running commands with this syntax is just slightly different. You just have to enter // before it. And otherwise we can run everything the same way. I'll call this output 2 just so you can differentiate it. And if I run it like this, we see that there is now a second folder, output 2. These files will be the exact same. I just ran it with a slightly different command line program called PowerShell. So as I mentioned, there's more we can do, but we'll leave that here for now to keep the video relatively short. And please reach out to me if you have any questions on how to run this before the course. Thank you.